Welcome to the Men's Mental Health Podcast with your host, Dr. Daniel Bates, licensed professional clinical counselor, educator, researcher, and longtime advocate for men's mental health. Each episode, Dr. Bates unpacks the science of men's mental health, from addiction, help-seeking, and male depression to culture and masculinity. You'll hear interviews with leading scholars and candid conversations with everyday men who've struggled and overcome, with insights drawn from Dr. Bates' 15 years of clinical practice serving men in Kentucky and Ohio. Whether you're a professional, a partner, or a man searching for practical tools, this show delivers evidence-based strategies you can use right now. No jargon, just real talk. Let's redefine what real strength looks like. Let's dive in.
I had the privilege of getting to do a spotlight on our own Dr. Bobby Gueh. And
Thank
so,
you.
Dr. Gueh, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Dan.
Awesome. Well, you stood out to me because you've got a nonprofit, I believe, and you're doing pretty cool things with your nonprofit. So, yeah, your organization stood out to me. I got a chance to kind of briefly look at your website a little bit. Well, before I jump into that, I want to get to know you. You and I were just chatting and connecting. And
Yeah.
so where are you based out of? What
Yep.
university are you affiliated with? If you are you clinically active? Give me just a kind of a snapshot of who you are and what you're up to.
Absolutely, Dan. First off, just thank you for this opportunity to just build with you and chat and share some of the work that I've been doing and here at Georgia State. And even as this work started before I came down to Georgia in New Jersey. So I'll share a little bit about that in a second. But prior to Georgia State, I was a long time practicing school counselor, Dan. I was a counselor for 20 years.
Okay.
So I was in the trenches. I did my master's at the College of New Jersey. So with the awesome Dr. Mark Kaselica, I think him and I shared that reunion when we had one of our virtual meetings. And then
Yeah.
again at ACES in Philly, we had a chance to sit together. So Dr. Mark was my first professor in intro to counseling in 2000. Yeah, 2000 when I started my master's at the College of New Jersey. So I did that program, and I was a practicing school counselor in New Jersey, Ewing, New Jersey, for about 7 years. And then from there, I moved to Georgia 2010. I worked at the elementary level as a practicing school counselor in Gwinnett County. And then after that, I went to the high school, Lanier High School in Gwinnett County as well. So I've had a chance to
Mhm.
work at every level, elementary, middle, and high school. And through those years, just had a chance to do a lot of work with our boys over the 20 years of doing this. Prior to going into the school counseling, I worked in the juvenile justice system for our young males. So that's
Okay.
really where the bug hit me, working with our young man in New Jersey. It was just during that time, gang violence was rampant, gang violence was huge. And we started to do work and research on what was the attraction for some of these young men in gangs. When we look at Maslow hierarchy of needs, the gangs were providing those things for these boys. So we started to do early work then, with our 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old young men who were in gangs across the state of Jersey. Started my PhD work at UGA, Go Dogs. I'm not an official dog, but I would claim it since I did my doctoral work there. And after that, I was fortunate to land a position at Georgia State, and I'm the coordinator for our school counseling program there. And this is my 5th year at Georgia State, and just to kind of give you a backdrop. And while doing that, I've still got my hands in the trenches with our nonprofit, working with middle school boys, still doing some mentoring program. And our program actually extends to the high school. I'll share about that in a little bit once we dive deep into the program structure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's so interesting because that I feel I'm warring within myself because I just want to talk with you and share
Yeah,
my story and just have a
absolutely.
great conversation with you. But I'm like I got to be a good interviewer here, so that means I need to shut up and ask more questions and not just share. But your interaction with the juvenile justice system, that was I think my gateway drug too into the
Mhm,
world of boys and into the world
mhm.
of men and into the world of mental health, men's mental health, and counseling.
Yep.
Because I'm not gonna take over here and make it about me, but my first real clinical foray into a working professional was working in the juvenile justice system. And I
Same
told
here.
you, I shared with Dr. Gueh here earlier, I'm from Washington State. And so the state that I was in, it was a restorative justice model. And the long and the short of the restorative justice model, there's a lot of pieces to it. But the idea is if someone's an offender, we try to reconnect them to the community. So, instead of just punishing them and disconnecting them from the community, we try to meet their needs, remediate,
Yep.
and then get them back into the community and get them with services and resources and help them, support them, meet their needs. And so it's like you don't need less community, you need more community. You need more
That's right.
relationships, you need more resources. And so that starts with the family, then it goes into the school, and then it goes into the broader community and maybe employment, education, and just goes on from there. So I'm already taking over here. Anyway,
Man,
so
Dan, that's
yeah.
exactly the same thing I was doing.
Okay,
So that
okay.
was absolutely my gateway drug as well. Back then, so you're talking about late 90s, early 2000s. The term restorative justice wasn't floating around, at least
Yeah.
in New Jersey. So we called it family aftercare. That was the position
Okay.
that I held. So I'm a 22-year-old kid right out of undergrad.
Yeah.
And I'm working with some of these guys that are 15, 16, like hardcore gang members.
Yep.
Once they're getting released back into the community, that's where I came in. So
Okay.
that aftercare of providing that wraparound service of, do you have enough credits to get back in school? Do you want to consider your GED? I'm looking at the family system. So I would
Yep.
actually go to their house
Yep.
and work with their parents, their guardians.
Yeah.
Some of them, they were trying to find a job. So help them find jobs. So that
Yeah.
was my role at 22,
That's
22
great.
years
Okay,
old.
so that's exactly what I did because when I was
Same
in
thing.
graduate school, I did functional family therapy. And the interesting thing about that model was they would take people from all backgrounds. So, like, you could be a probation officer and come get trained in functional family therapy. You could be a counseling student in grad school who's not licensed and get trained and then have a lot of oversight. So that's exactly what I did. I was 24
Mhm.
and I was doing in-home family therapy through the
Yep.
juvenile justice system. And so, but here's the gateway for me, Bobby, was working in that context. I was working mostly with males.
Yep.
It was mostly males in the system, right? And so then I was working with them individually and then by extension with their family doing in-home family therapy
Mhm.
and also doing, trying to connect them with resources, kind of doing some case management basically to quarterbacking certain
Mhm.
things, getting them plugged in with, resources and all that. And so, but it was a lot of males. And then I did that for 7 years. And then I was like, I want to expand. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to open up my own private practice. So then I started up my own private practice, ended my contract with the state, didn't do that any work anymore. And it took me, I'd say maybe a couple months, if not a year, before it dawned on me that in private practice, all the boys and men were gone. Like
Mhm.
they disappeared. And
Mhm.
so I went from serving one population, not exclusively. It wasn't 100% males. There were some young females I worked with too. But then it just totally inverted. Like 90% males gone, private practice, probably 90% female.
Mhm.
And so it was just really stood out to me. And that's what, as a clinician in the trenches, in the field, stood out to me, which then I got into the literature and in academia. And I was like, oh, this has been known for a while that males don't go to therapy. And there's cultural ideas that are at play here. And I was like, huh, no way. I don't know. Maybe I was just really naive, but that's what hit me in the face. And so anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going totally different direction here. Back to Bobby, back to Dr. Gueh. So I just thought that was an interesting point. And then your connection with Mark too, like
Yeah.
he's my academic hero. So
Yeah.
he's amazing. Anyway, so it sounds like you and I had a very similar trajectory, but your involvement, I didn't have. So not to go back to me. I was saying things not so much with gangs, some gangs, but also
Mhm.
some stuff with human trafficking too. And then just
Mhm.
like family issues. And then like in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of drug issues. So issues with drugs and substances. So I was saying more things around like human trafficking,
Mhm.
violence, drug use, family therapy issues, some gang involvement. It sounds like you were saying more gang involvement type stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Back then, there was a wave of gang initiation, gang violence, gang organizations that just swooped across the tri-state. So we had a influx of Latin Kings, Crips, Bloods. I mean, you name it. Which they're actually filtering down from New York into Trenton, New Jersey. So that late '90s, early 2000, for like a 5 to 6 year span, the gang violent rate, murder rate was just going up out the roof. And that's just around the time I was in this setting of finishing undergrad and going into, this work we call counseling and services. So it was just kind of a perfect storm. So literally, Dan, I'll be riding around my car taking these hardcore gang members to drug to to job interviews.
Yeah.
Like they in my car,
Yeah.
so and here's the unique thing. And this is where I actually hit the bug of, all right, I have something here. So I was doing this before I went into the master's program. When I would go into the homes,
Mhm.
there was just a keen look or a keen interest for the families for me. So I'm like, all right, I can't work with these boys in a silo because they're going back into this system, which is
Yeah.
their ecosystem, right? So, and
Yeah.
without just any formal knowledge about, that ecosystem model that, when we look at Brotherhood better ecological
Yes.
model, without any formal knowledge of that, I started asking questions about family structure
Yes.
and family systems. And I would ask my supervisor, I say, hey, you know, can I do something with their families and just not them?
Mm.
Again, 22-year-old kid. And they were like, well, you're not supposed to just focus on the kid, da da da. Take them to the job interview. It wasn't sitting with me.
Yeah.
So I started just doing it anyway. I
Yeah.
would, do certain things with the parents because when I'm there, they looked at me as this expert person. I would give them resources. They started to tell other people they knew, other supervisor or other people that worked in that environment. And my name goes up because this was a program ran out of the governor's office. And I was working directly with probation officers as well, with their probation officers, so they would tell their probation officers about what I was doing to support them and the
Mhm.
impact that was making. The
Mm.
probation officers would go back and say, all right, who's this kid? He's
Mhm.
doing something that. So literally at 22, 23 years old, they came to me to kind of create this family systems program.
Wow.
I had no idea of doing research, of structuring anything. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is just what I'm doing. So I had to find a way to just formalize exactly what I was doing,
Yeah.
you know, with this model of working with the kids, these boys. We have to also be working with the parents and the guardians simultaneously. So some of them, actually, it was honestly, when I look back, most of them, their parents were either locked up dead or out there strung out on dope.
Yeah.
So a lot of these boys they were with grandparents. They were caregivers, people who weren't like, parents,
Yes.
so, and they needed a lot of support. So
Yes.
we ended up developing a whole family systems program
Wow.
just out of what I was doing, just by my nature of there's something here. We can't
Yeah.
work with these kids in silos, So
Hmm.
that was monumental, early on in those early days, because when we're working with our young men, often at that age or at that time, and when they're 13, 14, 15, they're so impressionable about their community, their circle, their friends. And there was just this huge disconnect with family, you
Mhm.
know, so the more my goal was, all right, they have to get back in connecting with family because that was the support we're putting them back into. So the gangs again became their family. You look at it, it was
Yeah.
how can we start to swing that pendulum back to their support system, their grandparents or their uncle or whoever they were living with, and
Yes.
even some of the circles around them to be that family structure for them. So I was doing that stuff without knowing there was a lot of research behind it.
Yeah.
Later on,
Yeah.
out, the impactful research that was out there about what I was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gang violence, the gang operations, all that was just a huge pull for our
Yeah.
young men during those days, and that was my main goal. How can we create a new norm for them
Yeah.
and new view of looking at family structure? Because for most of them, their gangs were their family.
Yeah. Gangs, I'm curious about that because it's almost like it's like gangs like a found family. You know what I mean? I heard that language, found family, and so it's like
Absolutely.
if your biological family or the family that you're brought up in is not positive or helpful or just one that you want to be a part of and you don't feel
Yep.
like you belong to it. I think there's that thought. And then there's also the thought too of, I saw young men being raised by grandfathers or grandmothers or extended family. They were raised by stepdads or they were raised by drug addicted, incarcerated dads. It was just like everything in that young boy's life, he wasn't getting a direct fatherly or a direct positive male example or investment from.
Sure.
And then it's like I just saw these young men so deeply thirsty or hungry for a masculine identity. And I wonder if the gang, it's such a masculine environment, I guess, in the gang, like I don't see many females being included in those gangs. It's a hyper masculine environment that's giving you a pathway, a trajectory to have a masculine identity, be strong and powerful, and to be
Yep.
affirmed in that and to belong in that. And so it's like either I'm gonna go home to my family, stepdad hates me, or dad's drug addicted, or grandpa is trying his best, but grandpa's too tired and
But he's
he's an alcoholic or he's got medical issues. I've
yeah.
seen that. And so
Mhm.
then grandma, she's trying her best, but like, yeah, screw grandma. Like there's like I want the masculine
Yeah.
input and investment. And so mom or aunt or grandma, they love me and that's great, but I'm craving that masculine environment or that masculine input. And so I wonder if I saw I feel like I saw a motivation to seek that out years and with gangs and with those kinds of affiliations just because there was a lack of that in the family or extended family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if it sounds like that kind of matches with some of what you were saying too.
Yeah, it does. And that was a lot of the trajectory that a lot of these. It, so it was interesting in Trenton because I'm doing this work in Trenton at that time, Dan, and you have Trenton that was already at that time had experienced generational decay. So there was already a wave of moral decay in the city.
Hmm.
So the kids I was working with, they were probably second generation of that kind of stuff. That kind uh, of draw to the streets. Selling drugs. Selling drugs is you absolutely have to be a part of a gang
Mm.
because you can't be out there selling drugs, selling dope,
Yeah.
and you don't have protection. So
Right.
the gangs became the protection, right? So they were married together. They went hand in hand, and some of these guys were actually the next generation or the next wave of people in the city that was involved in that lifestyle. Some of their parents were gang members.
Mm.
So it was such a you know polarizing system that I was in
Mm.
because when I started to go deep with some of these guys and talk to them, I think I mentioned earlier, like that's where the bug, the counseling bug, what it really hit me. Because
Mhm.
while I was doing this, I actually applied to my master's at the same time. So started
Mhm.
doing it simultaneously. And I started to, in those drives while we're driving,
Yep.
just started talking to them, man. Having conversations about other stuff,
Yeah.
learning, listening to them, learning about them, about some of the dreams, learning that some of them wanted to own their own business one day. Yeah, they're out there selling dope. They gang banging. Some of them had guns on them while we're talking.
Right, right.
So, but I hear them. I'm started to hear, not just find. I started to hear meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
I started to hear that in their conversation, and I reinforced that. Validated those things that was coming up. It was an uphill battle, but over the years, a few of those kids I worked with, some of them were killed, due to the gang
Mhm.
violence. They were still stuck in it. But I'm telling you, man, I have several stories that were turnarounds to this
Yes.
day. Still connect with some
Wow.
of them to this day. This one young man I know specifically, you can tell he was different. Even he was caught up in that world. You can tell he was different for his conversation. So 2 years working with him, 3 years, he ended up getting his GED, ended up going to the military. Life turned around. This was
Mhm.
somebody who stayed always with drugs on him. He was in
Yep.
that world, and was a high ranking member in the Bloods. You know, so I'm like, man. So our boys just need a platform because what we see, particularly with our boys, the
Yes.
mask that they're wearing is typically the mask that their environment give them to wear.
Yeah.
So if you're in this environment where it's all drugs, it's all violence, it's all this, hyper masculinity of having,
Yeah.
you wear that mask.
Yep.
If I'm for a 30-minute ride, if I'm in this little small environment with somebody with a Dr. Gueh,
Yep.
or back then I wasn't Dr. Gueh, and this guy's trying to talk to me about other stuff other than what I'm living, he's giving me another kind of mask that I can wear. Maybe I can only put it on with him,
Yeah.
but it's a different mask from
Yeah.
what I typically wear. So I started to approach it. How can we start to give our boys a different mask that they can wear?
Yeah.
Each and every one of us have several masks in our closet, Dan. I have that firm belief that depending on where we are, we
Yeah.
put that mask. Depending what party it is, we put that mask on. So
Yeah.
how can we give our young men some other kinds of masks that they can put on, and wear in different environments?
And some of those masks are really vulnerable,
Yes.
and they're really private, and they're really and they're wrapped up with dreams, and so then a kiddo driving in the car with a Dr. Bobby Gore, and it's not face to face, right? We're both looking at the road, side by side, shoulder to shoulder,
Mhm.
and you just start talking, and it's like, I feel safe, and I'm starting to disclose some of those more vulnerable, private parts of myself that I can't share with the other guys,
That's right.
and then I get a affirmation from this male that I kind of respect and he's spending time with me. You can start building on that, but it's I don't know. I feel like we need 1,000 Dr. Guays out there. We need so much more of that because it's so hard to counteract the negative. Like
Yeah.
you have to put so much more in the positive. Anyway, I'm getting passionate now. So, and I'm curious, so these are your interactions with the juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
Tell me about the school counseling. Is
Yeah.
was it really separate or was it connected?
It was separate.
Okay.
So what I was doing with juvenile justice back then was I love your term, your gateway drug. I love that. I'm going to steal that, Dan.
Feel that, please.
That was my gateway drug into this world, this counseling world. But once I finished and I started at Fisher Middle School in Ewing, which was right around the corner from the College of New Jersey and where Mark was. When I got there, because of the work I was already doing with young men and boys, I'm like, all right, so this group of boys, they're not in the juvenile system, right? They're in school, they're playing sports, they're getting in trouble, but in school, they haven't crossed that road yet on the other side to be actually in gangs.
Right.
Some of them was fronting like they wanted to be in gangs, but they weren't in gangs. So I was like, all right, so what can we do to safeguard these guys
Yes.
before they go far on that end? So started a program at Fisher Middle School, a mentor program. It was 6th, 7th, 8th grade boys. We started right out of and this was my first or second year as a school counselor, man. This is 2002. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to get a group of boys. I
Yeah.
sent out an email to the teachers. I said, hey, I'm starting this program. At that time, College of New Jersey was right there. So Mark knew what I was doing. So me and him stayed connected.
Yeah.
I reached out to him. I told him what I was doing with these boys. He was he was all for it. He's like, Bobby, anything you need. He introduced me to another professor, Dr. Greg Seaton at the time,
Hmm.
he was teaching out of the education program. So pre-service teachers. So he had a heart for working with boys as well. I connected and collaborated, and we created a mentor program at the middle school.
Mhm.
But one of the things I noticed back then, anytime you're doing something specific, particularly in the school system for boys,
Mhm.
anything like a mentor program or anything of that nature, there's this automatic narrative that these boys are troubled. Back then, people would use the term at risk, bad boys.
Yes.
And even then, I'm like, yo, y'all chill out. That's not this party.
Yes. Yep.
So I fought with the staff. I fought with with teachers to say, hey, no, this is not that party. This program is not for bad boys or troubled boys. This
Yeah.
is a program, it's a leadership program. So I always pitched it
Oh, okay.
as a leadership program. So when those guys came in, their names were recommended. I have all 25, 30 of them. And they'll start looking around like, why we here?
Yep.
Say, hey, y'all, all your teachers recommended you as a leader.
Mm.
We are creating this leadership program for males in our school. We want to do this. We want to
Mm.
stand out. When we have our once a week, we have to dress up in a shirt and tie.
I love that.
My brother, it changed the game.
I love
So
that.
some of these kids that were being referred to me because they were so-called troublemakers or they were
Mhm.
getting in trouble, we started to reframe that narrative. You're a leader.
Yep.
It was an expectation when we met every week. They wore a shirt and tie. We provided shirts and ties for them. I went to the thrift store.
Yeah.
You ain't have a shirt, tie? I got you. We went to the thrift
Yeah.
store, bought ties and shirts. Me and Seaton, we'll, meet with them once a week after school. And then every year, we would take them to the College of New Jersey on a visit on
Mm.
a college campus so they can get a chance to be on a college campus. They actually did some, engaging activities with some of Dr. Seaton's students. A few
Mhm.
times, Mark actually hosted them. He did some activities with them and some of the graduate students at the time. That program just became so amazing, man. And it was full circle because as we were doing that, two things happened, Dan, that really solidified this work. I remember the first time we took them to the College of New Jersey. We were walking on campus because the school was 2 blocks from the college. We didn't have a bus. We had them dressed up in suits, ties, and church shoes, brother. We
Mhm.
walked. We were like the Montgomery bus boycott. We were marching to
Uh-huh.
the college. So we got about 35 boys. And as we're walking into the gates of the campus, this young man leaned over to me. He said, "Are we allowed on this campus?"
Wow. Mm.
That stuck with me. Are we allowed?
Yeah.
I don't know, to this day that it still resonate with me. And the
Yeah.
kid, he didn't even realize what maybe he did
Yeah.
subconsciously realize the impact of that question.
Yeah.
That was a more systemic question he was asking. As a Black boy,
Yeah.
am I allowed in this grand institution
Yeah.
that is pictured as a white space? Am I allowed on this campus? I say, you know what? You're gonna go in the cafeteria. We're gonna eat all the food in the cafeteria.
Yep.
I
Yep.
say, you belong here. So oh my goodness, I have chills telling that story because
Well,
it
I just
was
felt that. Like, I felt that, like, my whole body just tingled a little bit right there.
my brother. Yeah, that right there was one of the moments. I'm like, all right, we onto something here. So that program grew to where we were we actually got recognized by the governor office,
Oh, wow.
full circle, and we were getting $40,000 a year then
Hmm.
to run that program out of Fisher Middle School in New Jersey. And part of that was to provide some stipend for staff, volunteer staff who were coming in and doing some like academic support stuff with the guys. Every summer, we did a whole week, summer-long program for them where we took them on field trips to New York, to Philly, that we paid, teachers who wanted to earn a little bit of, cash over the summer. They came out and volunteered. So before I left Jersey, man, the program was just amazing and booming. And actually, my good colleague, Jill Schwartz, her and I graduated from TCNJ together. And we actually started working at Fisher together. She actually created a girls program out of
Oh, wow.
what we were doing with the boys.
Oh, wow.
So the demographics from the juvenile system was absolutely different than what I had with the boys.
Yeah.
And that goal and that push was, all right, how can we keep them from going in jail?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
It's
the way
it's a different
it was
focus.
we approached it more as a leadership program and leadership activity.
I love that.
Academy. Yeah.
I love that. And that statement stands out to me. Am I allowed? Because to me, obviously that's that one young man, but like he was probably verbalizing what all the other guys were thinking too. And
Yeah.
they probably had never imagined, like, could this, the dream that I have for my life, does it include success? Does it include something where I can access education and like have a life for myself? Like
Yeah.
that, his dream was so shortened, foreshortened, and had, probably negative things in it. And so I love that statement. Yeah. I had a statement from a young man. It was my first client. It was in the juvenile justice system. I had spent months trying to track this referral down and calling the parents, showing up their house
Right.
and just knocking on the door and like, hey, I'm here. No one's there.
Right.
And like just all these misses. I finally got the client. I finally got him in their house, and I got my bag out, my pad and everything. And I sat down and like, okay, let's start. And he said, I'm not talking to you. I said, oh no,
Wow.
why? Why? He said, because you look like a counselor.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
said, huh, yeah. And I like, it just like out of body experience, like, oh, I realized I had dress shoes on, khaki
Mm,
pants, and
mm.
like a dress shirt. And from that day forward, I just wore my normal clothes, street clothes,
Yep.
and like, and I was like, don't sit on the couch. Like, come, show me your room, show me your stuff, like, show me your Xbox, like, walk with me, like, let's go walk and like go shoot hoops. Like, forget the couch, throw my pad of paper out,
Yep.
switch my like suitcase, or not suitcase, but professional looking bag, and like have a backpack.
Backpack. Yep.
And then like let's talk about what's going on with you, and like why am I here? Why are you here? And just tell me about you. And like that's what opened up boys. And so it was interesting. The more relatable, and I was able to connect. But then but like you, that one statement from that young man stuck out in your head. That one statement from him, I'm not going to
Mm.
talk to you. You look like a counselor, has like
Wow.
drilled
Yeah.
into me. That was like over 16 years ago. And now
Mm.
it's just in there. Right. So, but I see that with men in counseling
Yeah.
too, where men will sit down, that they finally, their partner dragged them there. The judge threatened them, or they're doing diversion court, like they're there instead of prison, or whatever circumstances they're here under duress. They're here because of a
Mm.
crisis. And I see that same question in their minds. They're not saying it. But it's like,
Oof.
I'm not talking to you, or like, why am I here? You look like a counselor. This is counseling. I don't want to do this. And I just feel like that's the underlying assumption
Mm.
of like, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this? And
Yeah.
so when I'm working with men, I'm explaining as much as I'm doing. Like I'm flying the plane as I'm building it. Like I'm decoding therapy and
Mm.
help, and them sharing and opening up as much as I'm doing the therapy. Right.
Wow. Mm.
And I feel like that's where I see the dots starting to connect from my male patients, because they don't
Yeah.
intuitively get therapy. They don't intuitively get sharing their feelings, even more so for boys. I mean, But I don't really see that much difference between my adult male clients and my young male clients, adolescent clients. They don't get it as much as like, they're not that different, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I just went on a total tangent. Like you said, such good stuff. It's sparked so many thoughts inside me. So okay, we kind of traced the juvenile justice system experiences, then the school. What led you to form the nonprofit? Like what
Yeah.
got you there?
Man, so fast forward the story. So started Jersey, started that program there. 2010, I landed in Gwinnett County. And at that time, I'm at the elementary level. So my background before that was middle school. And when I went into school counseling, I had no passion. I didn't want anything to do with elementary school. I want to work with either middle or high school. So elementary school just kind of freaked me out. But that's where I landed. And that's the only jobs that were open in Gwinnett County at that time. So I'm like, you know what? I need a job. I got to pay bills. I got a 3-year-old son. I got a 1-year-old
Mhm.
son. So I got kids. I got mouths
Yep.
to feed.
Yep.
Started doing that work in Gwinnett at an elementary school. I was the third, fourth, fifth grade counselor. And then my partner had K through 2. And knowing the work I did in New Jersey started already with boys, the principal said, hey, Gueh, do you want to do something like that down here? I said, cool, for sure. Let's do it. So I started a program at the elementary level for third through fifth grade boys called Distinguished Gentlemen. So park that somewhere in this narrative.
Yep.
So Distinguished Gentlemen started off at the elementary level, third to fifth grade boys. The research, a lot of the research that came out of the cradle to prison pipeline back then, out of the National Defense Fund, they did a research back then with, cradle to prison pipeline. That research was specific in by fourth grade, prisons, systems, teachers, they can identify which kids, particularly working with boys, the trajectory they were on
Mhm.
will end up in prison. Now, there's a lot of debate there, but a lot of the research speak upon some of those ecosystems impact on those boys' third, fourth grade and the trajectory that they were on. And
Yes.
if something didn't intervene, if there wasn't any kind of intentional intervention, we're talking about generations of boys who are going to end up in prison. So that research stuck out to me back then. I'm
Mhm.
like, all right, you know what? I'm here for a reason. Let's start something early with these third, fourth, fifth grade boys before they even hit middle school.
Yeah.
So we started Distinguished Gentlemen. Same concept, mentor program. They dressed up, shirts and ties. So, oh man, I got pictures, man. One of these days I'll send you some of those pictures, see those young guys and
Yeah.
dressed up. One of again, some of the things I did is so unorthodox, Dan. People have asked me to write this stuff up for years. I'm like, it's really sometimes for me, it's hard to write something that was just organic for me,
Yeah.
which I'm doing some stuff now on that. But anyway, one of the models that I always approach this with is I was a basketball player. I was a basketball coach for many years,
Mhm.
and boys love to be part of a team.
Yes.
They'd love to have this uniformity. I
Yep.
remember getting my uniform when I played ball,
Yep.
being part of this team, and I coined or I approached it when they wear their ties and their shirt and
Yep.
they stand out. Man, the brother, I can't tell you the amount of feedback we got from teachers on
Yeah.
just their behavior.
Mm.
That, oh my goodness,
Huh.
compliments they receive. They walk
Yeah.
with their chests up a little more in the hallway.
Yep.
They're not being recognized for something negative. They're being recognized because they look good.
Right.
Oh, so we started doing that with, with the elementary boys. We did little field trips with them. We even
Mm.
took them on some college tours. And to get younger kids at college tours is like unheard of.
Yeah.
But I had some partners at a Morehouse down here in Georgia. We were able to take some of the elementary boys to Morehouse School of Medicine. And they had conversation with the Surgeon General. I mean, we
Oh,
had
wow.
some great experience down here. When I left there, I went to Lanier High School. And when I got to Lanier High School, by that time, the program I was running at the elementary level was heard about throughout the county, the district.
Okay.
And the principal that hired me at the high school said, "Hey, can you run that program here?" I said, "Absolutely." So we started Distinguished Gentlemen at the high school level when I got there. So ninth through 12th grade boys.
Yeah.
Ran that for many years. When I left Lanier High School and went to Georgia State, the Distinguished Gentleman program was still running, and I, left in good hands. But before I left, this was 2018. I'm coming into BMM, Brothers Making Moves now. What sparked Brothers Making Moves was two things. One was Trayvon Martin killing. The other one was Mike Brown. When those two things happened, this is 2015, 2016, around that time, the negative bombardment of Black males in the news, it was just unbearable for me.
Yep.
And some of the circles I was in, every week it was another Black kid has got killed, Tamir Rice out of Baltimore. So it was just haunting. So we said, you know what? Let's just start changing the narrative. By this time, I started to do research and learn about critical race theory. I started to, and this is when I first started my PhD program at UGA. This was 2014. I started to learn concepts like critical race theory. One of the main tenets is counter narrative. How can we counter the systemic narrative that are oppressing people?
Yeah.
One being that Black males are at risk instead of at promise. Let's change that to at promise.
Yes.
Black males are endangered species. No, they're not endangered species. They are human beings. We're going to treat them as human beings. So that whole counter narrative tenet out of critical race was something that I started to bring into this work. And I said, look, let's change the narrative, man, and start posting positive things Black men are doing in the community. So we started making hoodies, sweatshirts, t-shirts that have BMM Brothers Making Moves. It was just a social media campaign. So for example, you will get a shirt then and we will spotlight you similar to what you're doing here on the website or on the Instagram page, social, whatever page, and say, hey, this is Dan. He's a brother making moves. He's a professor, just a quick background of you and just highlight you. So every week we were doing that.
Oh, that's cool.
That went on for like a good year, man. So this is 2018, 2019. I was sending shirts and hoodies all over the country. Around 2020, I started to look at the middle school that fed into Lanier High School. They didn't have anything there for their boys. Their boys was coming to our high school and we had Distinguished Gentlemen. So I talked to the principals. I said, hey, I went to the principal meeting, the middle school principal, the high school principal. I said, hey, let's start something because we have Brothers Making Moves that didn't have anything to do with the school system. That was outside of the school. Distinguished Gentlemen was in the school. I said, BMM is a nonprofit that we started. I'm thinking of doing a middle school Saturday program called BMM Enrichment Academy, specifically for middle school boys, and start teaching them some of the tenets that the Distinguished Gentlemen guys are learning at the high school, and that be a feeder into the high school.
Yeah.
This conversation was happening. I was having this conversation with the mayor, some local leaders, the principals. 2020, we were like, yeah, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
COVID hit, so we put it on pause. Come back 2021, when things started to open back up. By this time, I get the appointment at Georgia State, so I'm no longer at the high school.
Yeah.
Which was actually perfect because now I can focus on building a nonprofit program. So that's how the BMM Enrichment Academy was birthed. So Brothers Making Moves, that's the nonprofit organization. So that's the big umbrella.
Okay.
Underneath BMM, we have the Enrichment Academy for our middle school boys.
Okay.
And have the high school program, Distinguished Gentlemen for the high school males. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Okay.
But that's the formal structure.
That's the structure.
Yeah. So with obviously Distinguished Gentlemen have been around for a while.
Yeah.
Because that was something I started many years ago. I wanted this kind of pathway with our middle school boys that feed into it.
Yeah.
And we have a cohort model. So the guys, the kids, the
Okay.
middle school that work with the Enrichment Academy, they
Mhm.
every Saturday, this is outside of school, so they meet every other Saturday. We meet in a community center in the Sugar Hill that I'm in. It's an Enrichment Academy, so they are engaged in more of hands-on learning. You know, we bring in guest speakers. In fact, this Saturday, we're actually taking them to one of the local airports. They're gonna, learn about flight simulation and that whole career
Oh,
pathway.
wow.
So we're doing more enrichment and engaging activity on that end.
Mhm.
They're with the middle school program from 7th, 8th grade. Then we host, we did our first rites of passage. Are you familiar with rites of passage?
Like broadly, but
Right.
not sounds like it's something specific.
Yeah. So broadly, rites of passage, obviously in some ancient cultures and some
Yeah.
other cultures, is where younger males or younger kids are going through this rituals so they can move into adulthood, right?
Okay.
So one of our sisters, so that's out of a lot of Afrocentric,
Yeah.
traditions.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that. I didn't share this at the beginning. I'm African. I'm from Liberia. I'm from West Africa. So I still have a lot of roots in my cultural background.
Yeah.
So we decided to do a rites of passage ceremony, bro. One of the things that just absolutely just
Yeah.
amazing. I'll send you some pictures. So we held our first rites of passage ceremony in this May,
Yeah.
where our high school boys
Yeah.
gave the middle school boys a tie and tie that tie for them.
Mm.
Find that they have gone through the Enrichment Academy for 2 years and now they're moving on to become a distinguished gentleman. Is that making
Okay.
sense?
Yes.
So that powerful picture, man, for our boys was something that we really, are proud of to see that transformation.
Yeah.
The 2 years they were with us, we have a staff of teachers that
Mhm.
work with them. I have some of my Georgia State students, graduate students come and volunteer in the program on those Saturdays. They come out, they
Mhm.
run groups, they run different activities with the boys. So we're on our second cohort now. So
Okay.
this is third year, second cohort. So again,
Yeah.
just like a graduate program, 2-year cohort, they graduate, then we get a new, group of boys. So that's just a kind of a backdrop on where we are with BMM.
It's amazing. And I hear a through line because you said earlier that that first initial program, when the boys were coming in, you said, "Oh, you're here because your teachers recommended you as a leader." And so it's such a powerful reframe to say, "Hey, you're here because there's potential. There's something in you that stood out to someone in authority or someone of influence. Something in you stood out. So that's why you're here."
Yep,
And we're and this environment's here to help explore that and expand it and to draw it out. And then I
absolutely.
hear that in distinguished gentlemen, not at risk, not problem, right? You're a
Mhm.
distinguished gentleman, so that's why you're here.
That's right.
And so I hear that so much, and I think that's so good for young men. I think especially for young black men
Mhm.
and I guess my mind goes back to a dream. Can I give them a vision for their life that's positive, where they can succeed? And that more vulnerable mask, it's really authentic to who they am, that is tied up with those pieces of who they see that they are and could be.
That's right.
And I empower that. And so I guess my question for you, Bobby, was that element of reframing, especially for young black men, for young black boys, of reframing a counter narrative, a narrative of, I would say, empowerment. How does that map onto masculinity?
So the word masculinity is who's defining it, Dad? So, I want to wrestle with that. How
Yeah,
do we define it? I think culturally, every culture have a different definition of what it
yeah,
should look like. So I think masculinity becomes what society says it is or what our environment says it is. So with that said, I think there's 100% a chance for us to reframe,
Mm.
restructure how we approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Masculinity, should be, is typically the way we define it or the way society is defining it for is not nurturing. Why is that? Is that is that nature or nurture? Is it just biologically
Yeah.
men are just nurturer? But then I've seen men who are nurturer. Have seen that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a level of there's an opportunity. I always look at things as opportunity.
Yeah.
Us to be able to reframe what masculinity is and how do we define it. Hence, we're really intentional now as we're working with our boys, the current middle school boys. We spend time on just sitting and talking
Yeah.
because middle school boys are so, they're supposed to be bouncing all over the place. But
Yeah.
we intentionally, one of the things I learned over the years, be intentional with sitting them down, giving them a safe space to just
Mm-hmm.
breathe, talk, and be.
Yeah.
Man, let me tell you, I brought one of my good sisters. She does mindfulness training for
Yeah.
boys. She actually does it
Oh.
for with NFL guys as well, like pro athletes. So I brought her in for our boys, and she did some mindfulness work with them. Probably one of the best with this new cohort we had. It just started, and we've only been with them for a few months, and probably one of the best emotional,
Mm.
powerful experience we've had with these guys so far. They were opening up to share. We have our boys now who are talking about, some of the mental health challenges they've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing boys, middle school boys say, my dad says for me not to cry,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thinking it's cool. It's fine for me to be able to cry. Nobody is putting these things in. Like, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
something is changing here.
Some. Yeah.
There's a shift. You know, the society narrative, we have to capture that. So we have to tell the story of, you know what? Yeah, we have boys here who want to are saying that it's okay to cry. They're articulating that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons we're diving into the research now and capturing the work we're doing with BMM
Mm-hmm.
because you have some of these real data and experiences, quantitative as well as qualitative data that's coming out of this. So hopefully with that kind of work and that kind of data, that kind of research,
Yeah.
some of the definition of how we approach masculinity can start to shift.
Yeah.
It's just a huge opportunity for us to reframe that in the different spaces we're in.
Yeah.
Academia, education, whatever it is, so just the broader society. Like challenging folks. All right, you know, let's change that.
Yeah.
Let's look at it differently. Let's look at masculine in a different way. One thing about this system we call this Western system is we give labels to things so much, and we get stuck in those labels.
Yeah.
So we're you know that counter narrative work that I've done. A lot of my dissertation was counter narrative work on the experiences of Black male school counselors. Is how
Mm.
can we change our narrative that we're that have been either given to us or a narrative that we're assuming society is given to us.
Yeah. What do you see as if it's a counter to, I would say maybe the more problematic labels and frameworks of masculinity? What would you say like you're pivoting to? What are you?
Yeah.
What's the new narrative that you're telling?
The man, it's that new narrative is it can be different for me. It can be different for you.
Mm.
And as a man, I think there's cultural implications as well.
Uh huh.
There's some implications on, um, you know, how what environments we're in.
Yeah.
But I think a broad stroke new narrative for sure will be to give our men,
Yeah.
that it's okay for our men, right, to have space to be able to express
Yes.
and that they are doing it,
Yep.
right? I've sat into in some circles with women
Yeah.
who feed into the narrative of the masculinity, or if we want to say is whatever it is. But
Yeah.
I would hear some women and say, I don't want no weak man. Well,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So I've had some back and forth conversation with women who have that mantra of, I don't want a weak man. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So the new narrative is giving men permission
Yes.
to feel. Society is not giving men permission to feel
Yeah.
in all spaces. Society is not giving men permission. They're telling men, we want you to feel, but you're not giving me permission to feel.
Yeah.
You're not giving me permission to, it's okay that I may not have it all right.
Yeah.
So some of the messages that you talk about, even fatherhood, to be a father, how am I supposed to show up as a husband or partner? Oftentimes men are not given those permission to just feel.
Yeah.
And I think that new narrative,
Yeah.
that's part of it, you know. And then
Yeah.
also when it's just individually, again, you know, how do I want to show up as a man?
Yeah.
Having that autonomy to show up of how I want to show up you know, as a man.
Well, and I appreciate you not putting too much definition around what that new narrative is,
Yeah.
because by inviting boys and young men and men to feel and to express, I don't know where they're gonna go with it. Like, that's up for them, but I think what historically the empowerment movement has been more focused on females, and I'm not like a men's right activist where I'm upset about that. I think it's
Yeah.
great that we've had an empowerment movement for females. Awesome. And I wanna say, what would it look like for us to have an empowerment movement for men?
Yeah.
And what would it look like to empower masculinity? And maybe there's not a lot of definition. I don't have a defined outcome of like, well, that's going to look like this. An
Yeah.
empowered masculinity needs to look like this, and I've already defined it, and I have a should around it. It's like, no, I don't have a definition around it, and that's okay. It's just
Mhm.
giving permission to young boys, to men,
Yeah.
to feel, to express, and to start to figure out what's true and authentic for them. And I think I really am like kind of a student of Mark in this regard, where I want to empower men is to be more pro-social and to
Yeah.
have more health promoting beliefs and attitudes in
Mhm.
their conception of masculinity. And
Mhm.
so I do have a bit of a predisposition in that regard.
Mhm.
I want to turn it from an antisocial predisposition to a pro-social disposition, and from a health demoting to a health promoting.
Promoting. Yeah.
So I do have a bias in that regard. I'll just put my cards down on the table and say I'm about that. I'm about
Mhm.
advocating, motivating, endorsing, encouraging men in that direction, because I think it's
100.
better for their relationships and better for their communities. So,
Mhm.
but again, what that looks like specifically for that individual, for a young black man, for a young white man, I don't know what that looks like, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them putting their own specific signature on it. But I am gonna
100%.
say, think about your needs and your health, and the
Yep.
needs and the health of your family and your friendships, and I am gonna push them in that direction. But I'm
Absolutely.
100% on board with you of like, but they gotta figure out the unique expression and signature of what that is for them and their community too, because
Yeah.
it's gonna look very different in their culture and their community. So again, I'm not saying, well, now you gotta do it the way Dan wants it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
No, that makes so much sense, my brother. And I think for me that freedom it's all about freedom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we talk about some again go back to Maslow hierarchy, the self determination and freedom. What is that? Men. There's a level of freedom in being able to self determine.
Yeah.
I think that's so important because even when you look at men, professional men who go into certain profession,
Mhm.
and they're chasing, what are you chasing? You're
Mhm.
chasing a job, you're chasing this, money, you're chasing whatever you're chasing, because again, society is structured to as is getting, the messages that you are the man, you are the breadwinner, you are the those messages add more to the pressure of that identity of being a man. So
Mhm.
I got to go out there and hustle. I got to go out there and hustle. So most relationships start deteriorating because of that,
Yeah.
because of the pressure that those men feel they have to go out and chase this bread, chase this money, chase this whatever they're chasing,
Yeah.
either for their ego or for their family. But then the family structure starts to deteriorate. The
Yes.
relationships start to deteriorate and
Yes.
decay. So
Yep.
some part of that reframing is hopefully that new narrative of, well, you don't have to be the breadwinner or approach it from that matter, approach it from that standpoint. This can be a unified thing with you and your partner, and it's okay, right? It's okay. It's you don't. It's not. It's a joint, unified
Yeah.
thing, goal for you all.
Yeah.
But as a male, if you take on all that pressure of having to be the breadwinner,
Yeah.
but those are messages they're hearing from their fathers,
Yes. Yes.
or other men in their environment as they're growing up,
Or just as they're looking around, yeah,
as they're looking around.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they're looking around and they're saying, "What are the key male figures in my environment? What are they doing? Let me take my notes from them." I mean, I practice the Gottman method in my couples counseling. I also like narrative therapy, and so I think within those narratives, there's dreams embedded within those narratives.
Yes.
A dream for who I am and what I can be and what kind of life I'm gonna live. And within the dream, there's meaning and purpose and what I'm pursuing. And so I also do think, and maybe you would disagree with me or maybe you would agree with me, I'm not sure, but I think there's like male specific, and not like they have to be anti-feminine or can't be feminine, but there's just like a male signature dream of like what it looks like to be a strong, full of agency, empowered man, self-actualized man. You
Mhm.
use that Maslow language and self-actualization because I guess I kind of go into my humanistic philosophy a little bit. Like I agree with Rogers that there's like
Mm.
this this tendency, this growth oriented tendency within myself. And so what does it look like for me to express that as a man and to full experience full growth as a man? And so, I think I guess we're getting into more kind of philosophy here, but I think there's some positions that want to kind of deconstruct the
Yeah.
masculinity construct within men that it and internalize for
Mhm.
me, and maybe even dismantle it and do away with it. And for me, I'm somewhat critical of that perspective because I think maybe it's a bit of a non-starter for men. Men don't want to necessarily dismantle that because I
Yeah.
think men like the masculine within themselves. So then I would say, okay, how do I empower it? So again, I put my presumptions, my presuppositions down so that it's pro-social and health promoting.
Sure.
So how do you explore? Like I agree with you. I want to help that man and give him permission, or that boy, to explore within himself the true, authentic, genuine parts that are within him that
Mhm.
are health promoting and pro social, and then grow and develop and become more of that dream, the dream
Mhm.
that's embedded in that narrative of who
That
they
dream. Yep.
are, that's more aligned with those things. And then
Yeah.
once you get them excited about that, they start taking better care of themselves and their relationships and their families, and they start experiencing more growth, and some of the positive psychology traits start, I think, emerging, and you can say, wow, there's a real male signature, positive personality traits, positive psychology attributes that you can see there. And so I guess I'm also again, I really like Mark. I'm really a big fan of Mark. I like
Mhm.
positive psychology, and I
Yeah.
like all those aspects. And so I see that kind of all flourish and blossom within that dream, that kind of signature dream. So I don't know. I don't know if I have too specific of an idea there because maybe I'm at conflict with myself here because I do want to allow men to kind of explore and arrive at whatever destination they are, but I guess I do have a kind of a destination in mind too.
That's why I was going to ask you. Actually, I guess I'm going to interview you a little bit. So, if you had to select or pick or give 2 to 3 description
Hmm.
of a man or characteristic that men, or if we want to use the word masculinity, what are those 2 to 3 descriptors, characteristics, just from your
Mm.
experience, which leads to the conversation or diatribe you were having is what's that
Yeah.
end goal of what describes men or what should describe a man in today's society and culture?
Man, gosh, why you gotta do this to me? Why you gotta hold my feet to the fire like this? I think it's someone who I wants to contribute. I think the idea of contribution. So
Okay.
I wanna make a contribution, a positive contribution to my family, to my community, to my society. And again, one that's pro-social and promotes health and well-being of themselves and others.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes a degree of maybe accountability and responsibility too. Because if I'm not contributing and I'm taking things, I'm exploiting and just looking out for number one, there's a harm that comes with that. And so I think that's an element of masculinity that again, I'm not a men's rights activist because I'm not all pro men and men are flaw, without fault. I think
Yeah.
there's true, genuine harms created by men. And so
Yeah.
we have to kind of counteract our own harmful tendencies
Mhm.
and capture the parts of us that want to flourish and to contribute and to promote others and society. So there's also like an others orientation too, I think, too, where I'm not just looking out to myself. And so have you seen that book by Scott Galloway, Notes on Men? It just came out.
No,
And that's one thing he's talking about is, older men have a responsibility to this up and coming generation of men.
absolutely.
And I think him just saying that captures this idea of contribution, taking responsibility, accountability, not looking out for number one, but investment in others. So an others orientation. But I think there's male signatures. There's specific male qualities to it. The way
Mhm.
I may express my nurturing may be different than my wife does.
Mhm.
And so I think there's some male. So like that paper from Mark and Matt Inglar Carlson, they looked at, those 10 male strengths. So like male heroism, male relationships. I really appreciate the fact that he had those positive psychology traits and put the male because I think there's of course females can be heroic.
Sure.
Females can take responsibility.
Absolutely.
Females can be providers, of course, but there's male specific ways that men do it. Because I think back to your statement, Bobby, about the rites of passage. To me, that speaks to something ancient and universal. That's about I don't know some deep internal masculine fundamental aspect of my being and nature
Yeah.
that is important and I'm tapping into with a rite of passage. And I'm
Mhm.
tapping into maybe cultural notions that either empower it or diminish it. So I
Mhm.
think that's what I'm interested too is cultural norms and values and investments from older males to younger males that empower that part of me so that I don't just create a better life for myself, but for my family, my community, and my society. Yeah. I I'm sure I have more thoughts, but I think that's my rough
No.
sketch.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what you just said, Dan, you are spot on with the model because a lot of the work again that we're doing now that I'm doing is based on Afrocentric principles.
Okay.
One of them being the rites of passage. culturally, my father actually went through that rites of passage in the tribe that I'm from in Africa. He went through it.
Wow.
And he tells us this, my dad is 85 years old. So
Wow.
he remember the village that our people are from. His father, my grandfather, and other prominent men in the village took him, brother, and some other boys to the hinterland or the forest. And they went there for weeks.
Wow.
In that space, they went through different rituals. They went through how to hunt, they spiritual rituals. And when they came back, the goal is, or the idea is, these boys are now men. So
Yes.
they now can start taking other responsibility within the village,
Okay.
within the clan, to be able to give back to their community.
Yep.
So when you take that ancient concept,
Uh-huh.
that's exactly what you just mentioned. That's exactly what we're doing. That's exactly what I've done with our mentor programs over the years.
Yeah.
Is how can we, as men,
Yeah.
our elders, you're an elder in your village.
Yeah.
I'm an elder because we have more life experiences.
Right.
How can we pour back into these boys, so that tradition can be passed to them, and
Yeah.
then one day they'll be able to pass that tradition to the generation after them.
I love that. And I think it's like taking that core fundamental, maybe even ancient, maybe an ancient element of that's in all boys, and it's coming out, expressing itself. And I guess maybe us elders helping contextualize what that
Yeah,
looks like for that young man to do it in this society, in this culture, in this modernity, or whatever, wherever they find themselves. Because I don't see that process as being white or Western. I see it
no,
as being really kind of universal in a way. And so, like,
yeah,
I guess I also follow evolutionary psychology and some of the work by Archer and Buss. And so you look at, of course, there's variability across culture, but there's it's variability within pretty similar
absolutely,
constructs of responsibility, of providing contribution. And so
mhm,
it's variability within those things.
yeah, yeah,
So, but it's not like there's not really a culture where there's not an emphasis on that among men. And
mhm,
so it's not too different. I see like a kinship and a connection and a fellowship of men
mhm,
in different cultures, because I
mhm.
think we're still kind of operating under those kind of basic fundamental impulses.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And I think a big responsibility. This is one of my fundamental belief.
yeah.
So to the question I asked you about one of the few characteristics, and I know it's many more, I put you on the spot to give you
Yeah.
only two.
Yeah.
You're like, bro, how can I give you just two or three?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the fundamental piece for me that I would describe or characteristic for a man, men are responsible, and this is more from my African background, men are responsible for the traditions of the culture.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
up to pass that down to the
Mm.
children,
Mm.
right? So men are the protectors of those cultural traditions.
Okay.
And I think there's a responsibility that we have as men in our communities
I see.
to protect that. If it's the spirituality, if it's the
Yeah.
whatever it is, there's that responsibility as a man,
Yeah.
in my community to protect that, to safeguard that, and then
Yeah.
pass that down to the next generation.
Well, I guess the thought that keeps coming back to mind is, and you mentioned Bronfenbrenner and the ecological model, which I went to University of Cincinnati. That was the model that I was trained in. Really, is just the idea of cultural validity. And
Yeah.
so, I guess bringing that to more of a practical focus when I'm counseling and working with boys and men, I'm also thinking of like cultural humility within myself. That's something I'm applying to myself. But then when I'm applying interventions and I'm thinking about empowering their masculinity,
Mhm.
that's got to be ecologically valid, culturally valid for them and their context.
Absolutely.
So what the way I empower a client's masculinity, a boy's masculinity, will look different, and that there is a responsibility for me to get to know them and their context and their history and their culture better too, as much as
Mhm.
it's relevant and it impacts them. So I appreciate that point too. And I think your question earlier, like who defines masculinity,
Yeah.
that's a good question too. Okay, Bobby, I'm eating up so much of your time, and I love talking with you. But I guess what I want to start to wrap up and ask is, how can people find out more about your organization?
Awesome.
How can people support it or eh, I don't know, replicate it in their
Yeah.
community? Or you also mentioned research. I'm kind of interested about that too, because I think we need more research on some of these programs that are out there. We don't need to
Mhm.
go recreate the wheel. If there's the Bobby
Yeah.
Guehs out there who are creating these awesome programs, let's
Yeah.
research them, find out what's working, replicate it, expand it, etc. So, sorry, that was like 10 questions there in one. So,
No, you're good, my brother. First off, again, I think you have to link to the website. So feel free,
okay.
once you push this out, you can
Yep.
direct folks to the website to just
Yep.
see what we're doing. And there's different contact information on there, how people can, connect with us. And, there's an Instagram social media as well called Brothers Making Moves. I'll text you that link as well, so
Okay.
if you want to share that, folks easily can go on social media and follow what we're doing. The research I'm working on right now, I have about 4 of our doc students that are co-authoring this research with me. One who actually did some YPAR youth participatory action research for the first cohort of BMM guys that graduated.
Okay.
Phenomenal. So she's working on publishing with that work. So, once that come out, keep our fingers crossed. That'll be some stuff we'll push out. And I'm currently working on one. Are you familiar with Dr. Eric Hines and James Moore out of Ohio?
No.
Oh man, so James Moore is out of Ohio
Okay.
and Eric is James Madison, I think. I can't remember now. But they are editing a forthcoming journal to focus on Black
Mm,
boys
mm,
and career development specifically.
okay.
So we got the approval to submit an article for this on the work we're doing with BMS specifically.
Okay.
And we're sharing because a lot of the work we do as an enrichment academy is give them career exposure.
Yeah.
So we're using the models of YOSO work, community cultural wealth, and you're familiar with YOSO work, community cultural wealth.
Okay.
We're working with marginalized groups or, there's cultural wealth there within that, so
Yes.
we don't have to look outside to bring in,
Right.
this savior for the people.
Right.
So we're using YOSO work and some of her research on community cultural wealth,
That's awesome.
as well the African principles of Kwanzaa. So the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. So
Mm,
what we do with our boys now, every month we have a different principle out of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. That's kind of their theme of the month. And
mm,
our staff build lessons and we build activities around those themes. So for example, unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility,
mhm,
cooperative economics, creativity. So we build
mm.
month activities around those principles. So we'll be doing that research and sharing that, with the
Amazing.
journal coming out in a few months.
Amazing.
I mean, right now is just folks can just connect with me either through email to Georgia State. They can, follow us on our website link.
Okay.
You know, I've had so many people ask how they can replicate, duplicate what
Yeah.
we're doing. I'm gonna be 100 with you, my brother. The
Mm,
kids on the street say I'm gonna be 100.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna be 100. The main ingredient to do any of this work
Uh huh.
is people who have the heart
Yes.
and the compassion for our young men,
Yes.
period.
Yep.
Because this is a labor of love, to be honest with you. I've seen volunteers come and go because
Yeah.
it's not important to them. That's how when I give volunteers, I say, hey, if this is not important to you,
Yep.
don't come.
Yeah.
Because, we have volunteer mentors, even my Georgia State students, when they ask to volunteer, I do a very intentional interview process with all our volunteers, let
Yeah.
them know what it's about, because we don't want people coming in and out these kids' lives. They're already,
Oh,
some of them
sure.
are experiencing some unstructured situations. So we don't
Sure.
want that to be another added burden for them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that, we're at the early stages, man, but we do have aspiration 100% to spread this thing across the state. There's other school districts that have reached out. We have done some work with them
Mhm.
formally, but we definitely envision having BMN chapters in other states across the country, my brother.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah,
if the men's mental health interest, a network can do anything to support that, I'm all for it. So I think even
absolutely.
my hope is just even giving you a spotlight and talking about what you're doing. My
This
hope
is
will help.
big. Yeah.
I hope it will
Oh,
help.
no, this is huge.
Yeah.
And that's why I really appreciate this, Dan, because this right here is, I think I said when we met in ACES that, Frederick Douglass said,
Mm,
it's easier to develop, children than to repair broken men. That's always
mhm,
my motto, man. So let's start with with these younger guys. Hopefully
mhm,
give it space to be able to talk, express, do all
mhm,
the deep soul,
mhm.
so they're not 40, 50-year-old men
Yep.
sitting in the car,
Yep.
and contemplating taking their life,
Yes.
so
Yes. Well, we didn't even touch on suicide. I was going to talk with you about suicide, but we'll have to save that for our next conversation,
let's do it.
Bobby.
Let's
'Cause
do
I
it.
wanna
Let's
talk
do
to you
it.
more.
'Cause,
You said be friends. I wanna be your friend, and I wanna talk with you more and, connect with you and collaborate with you and maybe talk with you a second conversation too, so we'll have
man,
to
absolutely, man. I
schedule it.
definitely see maybe some opportunity to do some research together, my brother.
Yes, please, please.
Yeah,
I want it. So, but
man.
yeah, thank you so much, Bobby, and any information you've got about your organization, you said the website, but any like social media links, I can put that in the video description. So just whatever you think is helpful for me to plug into that, send it to me. But I can also just grab the website and a description that way too. So, but yeah,
Brother, appreciate you.
thank you so much for taking time out as the semester's wrapping up too. Like this is hectic for everybody, so I appreciate you so much for doing this, Bobby.
Man, one love and love your leadership and the work, my brother. So we'll talk soon.
Thank you. All right. You have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later.
All right, talk soon. Bye bye.
All right. See ya.